The year was 1962. The world was locked in a perilous standoff. The United States and the Soviet Union, victors of World War II, now found themselves as bitter rivals. It was the Cold War, a global chess match of ideology, military might, and espionage. Fear and suspicion were the currency of the day. The shadow of nuclear annihilation loomed large. The fate of the world hung precariously in the balance. At the heart of this global struggle was the constant threat of nuclear war. Both superpowers possessed arsenals of unimaginable destructive power. The mere existence of these weapons cast a pall over the world. A single misstep, a miscalculation, a misunderstanding could trigger a catastrophe beyond comprehension. The stakes couldn't have been higher. The Cold War was not confined to the battlefields of Europe. It spilled over into every corner of the globe. Proxy wars raged in Korea, Vietnam, and beyond. Each side sought to expand their sphere of influence, to win over hearts and minds, to undermine the other at every turn. It was a dangerous game played by men who held the fate of humanity in their hands. In this volatile atmosphere, a small island nation in the Caribbean became the focal point of a crisis that would push the world to the brink. Cuba, led by the fiery revolutionary Fidel Castro, had recently aligned itself with the Soviet Union. This alliance, just 90 miles off the coast of Florida, would prove to be a powder keg. At the center of this unfolding drama were three men: John F. Kennedy, the young and charismatic president of the United States; Nikita Khrushchev, the shrewd and unpredictable leader of the Soviet Union; and Fidel Castro, the defiant revolutionary who had dared to challenge American power in his own backyard. Kennedy, having assumed the presidency just a year earlier, projected an image of youthful vigor and determination. Yet he was also acutely aware of the awesome responsibility he carried. The weight of the world and the lives of millions rested on his shoulders. Khrushchev, a veteran of the Bolshevik Revolution and Stalin's successor, was a formidable adversary. Cunning and impulsive, he was determined to assert Soviet power on the world stage. He saw in Cuba an opportunity to challenge American hegemony and bolster Soviet prestige. Castro, having overthrown the Batista regime in 1959, was a thorn in the side of the United States. His embrace of communism and alliance with the Soviet Union had made him a prime target for American hostility. He welcomed Soviet support, seeing it as a bulwark against further American aggression. In the autumn of 1962, the world watched with bated breath as the crisis in Cuba unfolded. American intelligence had discovered something ominous. The Soviets were installing nuclear-armed missiles on the island. These missiles, capable of reaching American soil within minutes, represented a dramatic escalation of the Cold War. The news, delivered to President Kennedy on October 16, 1962, sent shockwaves through the White House. The presence of Soviet missiles in Cuba was a direct threat to American security, a line in the sand that could not be ignored. The world held its breath. The Americans called it the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Soviets, with characteristic understatement, dubbed it the Caribbean Crisis. Whatever the name, the reality was stark. The world was on the brink of nuclear war, and the fate of humanity rested in the hands of a few powerful men. 13 days of terror, brinkmanship, and miscalculation. For 13 agonizing days in October 1962, the world watched and waited. The United States, under Kennedy's leadership, responded to the Soviet missile deployment with a naval blockade of Cuba. This quarantine, as it was carefully termed, was designed to prevent further Soviet shipments from reaching the island. The world held its breath. Nuclear-armed bombers took to the skies. Soviet submarines prowled the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. The tension was palpable. The possibility of a nuclear exchange, accidental or intentional, was terrifyingly real. Communication channels hummed with activity. Kennedy and Khrushchev, each acutely aware of the stakes, exchanged tense messages. Yet miscommunication and mistrust plagued their every interaction. The fog of war, thick with suspicion and fear, threatened to engulf them all. A naval quarantine and backroom diplomacy. As the world teetered on the brink, frantic diplomatic efforts got underway. Behind the scenes, away from the glare of the public eye, negotiators worked feverishly to find a peaceful resolution. The pressure was immense. The weight of history pressed down upon them. Kennedy, determined to project strength and resolve, refused to back down. He demanded the removal of the Soviet missiles from Cuba. Khrushchev, for his part, was equally determined not to be seen to blink in the face of American pressure. The situation was incredibly volatile. A single misstep, a miscalculation, a misunderstanding, could have triggered a chain of events with unimaginable consequences. The world watched, prayed, and hoped for a miracle. Averting Armageddon, one step from the abyss. Through a combination of unwavering resolve, strategic brinkmanship, and a hefty dose of luck, disaster was averted. Khrushchev, facing the very real possibility of nuclear war, agreed to remove the missiles from Cuba. In return, the United States secretly pledged to remove its own Jupiter missiles from Turkey. The crisis, though ultimately resolved peacefully, had exposed the fragility of peace in the nuclear age. It served as a stark reminder that even the most carefully calibrated plans could go awry, that the world was just one mistake away from annihilation. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief. The immediate crisis had passed, but the memory of those harrowing days lingered. The Cuban Missile Crisis became a defining moment of the Cold War, a chilling reminder of the ever-present danger of nuclear confrontation. The legacy of the crisis: lessons in nuclear brinkmanship. The Cuban Missile Crisis holds a unique place in human history. Never before, and thankfully never since, has the world come so close to nuclear war. It is a tale of how the actions of a few men, driven by ideology, ambition, and fear, could have had catastrophic consequences for all humanity. The crisis underscored the need for clear communication, for cool heads, and for a recognition that even in the depths of the Cold War, dialogue and diplomacy were the only viable paths to peace. It taught the world a valuable, if terrifying, lesson about the fragility of peace in the nuclear age. The legacy of the Cuban Missile Crisis is a sobering one. It is a reminder of the ever-present danger of nuclear weapons, a danger that persists to this day. It is a call to action, a plea for sanity and reason, a reminder that the only way to win a nuclear war